my name is David Fisher, and today I would like to talk to you guys about the eclipse that we're about to have on April 8th. That's going to happen in Aries at 19 degrees of Aries, which happens to be very close to the sun's exalting degree, which I think it's about 20 or 21 degrees of Aries, if I'm not mistaken. I forget the exact. What matters is the sun is very well positioned in this sign. Now, we have to talk first about the topic of Aries, the house that Aries occupies in your chart and the topics associated with the sign of Aries. And so first, I would like to talk to you guys about the things around the eclipse, the factors that will have an influence on this particular eclipse. First of all, we're going to talk about the sign of Aries and its characteristics. Signs themselves, they don't signify anything. But when you have certain planets in those signs, and depending on the house that they occupy, you have a certain expression that comes about from that sign. So if you have Aries in the first house, the significations that Aries will bring about will have to do with you, your physical body, your health, and things like that. If you have Aries in the seventh house, then Aries will come off expressing relationships and contracts and things like that in your particular birth chart and your narrative. So it can signify a lot of things. It's a way of being, basically. Each sign is just a way of being, and they will signify whatever topics they happen to be associated with by house placement and by the planets that are inserted, that are present in that particular sign. In this case, we are going to have in Aries the Sun, Mercury, and Venus. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But first, I want to mention that Aries is a sign of action. Wherever it falls in your chart, it's associated to Mars, and whatever Mars is doing, it's going to have an influence on what happens in that particular house where Aries is placed. But it always recalls action. It recalls creation. It recalls autonomy and initiation. What's the word I'm looking for here? It's authority. Authority is a very good word for Mars and for Aries. So the sign of Aries, beyond action and initiation and starting things and being autonomous and all of that, in that sign of Aries, we are seeing two other planets with the sun, besides the sun and the moon, of course, because we're going to have an eclipse that involves the sun and the moon both in the same sign. It's a solar eclipse. But we also have Mercury and Venus there. Mercury and Venus, they're two planets that are very close to the sun. They're personal planets, and they talk about our relationships. They talk about our ability to communicate within those relationships. I'm bringing relationships to vogue because they're both planets that are relational. They're both planets that talk about trying to bring things that are alike together. Venus especially bringing things that are alike together, but Mercury is kind of things that are associated by proxy because they are close in significations to one another. For instance, if you have a model of the solar system, it stands for representing the solar system. It's not the solar system, but it's a model of it. So Mercury is things that are associated by proxy, or things that are associated by, how do you call that? Perspective. You see, Mercury is about debate, and it's also about disagreement. Not like Mars. Mars is fighting. Mercury is about contesting what's been said. It's about challenging an idea that was previously there. And I'm mentioning this because Mercury will be retrograde during this eclipse, and Mercury retrogrades generally bring about discussion of topics that were in place in that particular sign. You have to look at the topics again that are related to the house where it falls in your particular birth chart to understand how, which topics Mercury is going to be challenging. But it's going to be challenging it by speaking freely, by speaking with authority, by speaking unapologetically, let's say. If you have a troubled Mercury in your birth chart, that would be a reason to watch for conflicts, unnecessary conflicts because of misunderstandings, because of words that were spoken too soon or too harshly. If you have a very good Mercury in your chart, that might actually help you speak up or bring new ideas that will make sense, that will allow you to understand a particular topic in that house for you more maturely, or more in a way that will allow you to create new ideas, basically, to deal with that part of your birth chart, and that's going to be more on the helpful side for you. With Venus, we have this idea of relationships, but she's not very well placed in Mars' sign. Now, we have a retrograde planet, Mercury, an exalted planet, the Sun, and Venus, which is debilitated. She doesn't like being in Aries because it's opposite to Libra, her diurnal home, Venus. And because of that, her expression, trying to bring things together, will happen in a dissonant kind of way. She'll be like, I need to make things pretty, I need to make things beautiful, I need to make things stable, I need to make things attractive, I need to make things harmonious. Mars is like, well, you gotta fight for that. You gotta have difficult conversations. You got to have discomfort in those difficult conversations in order to go through this period and make it harmonious again in the future when Venus is in Taurus. While she's in Aries, she's not going to make much harmony happen. She's going to try, but what Mars is able to give her is just tools that are not really in her essence, that don't match Venus's significations. And since we're talking about Mars ruling the sign of Aries, we have Mars being in Pisces at the moment, and it's conjunct Saturn at the time of the eclipse, April 8th. So that's going to have a specific influence over the results that we're going to get from this transit. So Mars ruling Aries, being in aversion to it, what does that mean? Being unable to look at that sign, unable to aspect the sign of Aries, trine, square, sextile, conjunction, not conjunction, but sort of opposition, those are all aspects. Those are all forms that the planets have to have relationships with the signs around them, or the ones that they're in. There are specific expressions of that planet in relation to a sign. Now, when a planet rules a certain sign and it cannot see that sign, it means that whatever results come from the actions signified by the transit in that determined sign will fall short, or they will not have the expected end result. Now, if you start anything now, I already said eclipses are very unstable energies. They don't allow you to follow through properly with the things that you had intended once you began the action. Or the ideas that come through at this time, they will be changed. They will follow in a different direction because of chaotic circumstances, unforeseen events that impede you from reaching your goal in the determined way, in the planned way. Because Mars is with Saturn and Venus, exaltation ruler of Pisces, but also under the rulership of Mars during the eclipse, is instability, which is another Saturnian kind of expression of a planet. It has to do with a Saturnine idea of being exiled. You will see during this eclipse the impediments, the restrictions, the difficulties being much more pronounced. So we already see during this beginning of Mercury retrograde period that we're having right now as this video is being recorded, we see a lot of tech problems. I've been having them since Mercury stationed retrograde. Everything has started going awry. I lost my earphones. The phone turned off in the middle of this recording. We tried to go buy some stuff in some stores this morning. What? We had a bee interrupting the recording as well. And we tried to buy some stuff in the morning, and all the systems in both stores that we went to were down. We couldn't pay for anything that we were trying to take from the store for a long time. Like, we had to stay in line for a while in order for things to get done. And in the second time, she was like, yes, our systems are a bit slow today, but that's because we just changed the systems today. So they replaced the old system for something new, which is very mercurial. I thought that was very interesting as I was walking out the store. I even spoke to John, my partner, about how Mercury retrograde was correlated to that particular incident. Now, you can expect things like that to happen when you're trying to achieve anything that you set your mind to. There will be that feeling of, I am not being allowed to do something, but you can't really go for the unruly child and throw a tantrum at life circumstances. You might feel like that's the way to go. You might feel overburdened by these circumstances and be like, I'll just throw the towel and just fuck everything. Let me do whatever I want. Let me just do whatever I feel like impulsively in the moment and resolve the issues. But because Venus is in there, I would advise against it. The result of being rash, of being to be the end of relationships, they're going to be the burning of bridges. They're going to be the cutting away of, or breach, or breaking of contracts and laws even, that are going to bring you strife. They're going to bring you grief in the process. And that's another Martian and Saturnian signification. Grief, despair, panic, fear. All of those things can happen if you are too harsh, if you are too much in this particular eclipse. So there has to be a balance. There has to be some kind of inward, reflective quality to your actions whenever you decide to act, if necessary. I would say just anything that seems too urgent right now. Of course, if you have an accident or if you have urgent things to resolve, pay attention to that and focus only on that. But if it's something that could wait, if it's something that it's making you really anxious, try to deal with your anxiety first, step by step. Try to slow down, retrace your steps, see what led you to be in that particular place. What's motivating your anxiety truly? Because we also have the tendency when we're feeling like that to blame the things that have been bothering us but are not necessarily the main causes of our grievances, of our problems at that particular moment. So try to check inwards, try to check yourself inside first before acting on your impulses. That's the idea behind the retrograde, the Venus debilitated, and Mars in aversion conjunct Saturn. Remember, if you do those things, the results are going to be chaotic and unexpected and, anyone's guess of what might happen to you and to your plans if you are too harsh or too rash in your decisions. And next, we are going to talk about the head of the dragon. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, I'm not sure, but I might have talked about how how the Sun conjunct the North Node, the Moon conjunct the North Node in this particular eclipse means that things are going to grow. They have the tendency to be expanded because the North Node has this idea in the classical, not in the classical, but in the medieval texts of increase. Even like some classical texts, I think, if I remember correctly, they are about, the North Node is about increase. It's about making things magnified, larger, not in the Jupiterian sense, which is to bring to vogue things that are to the forefront, things that are important, things that are necessary for a particular cause, supportive of a particular cause. It makes things larger, period, whatever it is. If it's supportive or not, it will make more of it. Now, that, again, is another reason why you shouldn't be too rash on your decisions, because if you go without much planning, without much structure, without the proper tools, with harsh words, you might see that it has a much farther reaching consequence for you than you've anticipated. So it might be something much more long-term than you had planned for. You say something in anger, and that might backfire on you spectacularly. So be aware of that. Also be aware of deceitfulness around the North Node, because both nodes represent shadowy figures or uncertainty or things that you think, mirages, like you think that's one thing, you get close to it and there's nothing there. That's the meaning of the nodes as well. They are kind of shadow beings in representation, in illustration. So beware of that while you are trying to not be impulsive in your decisions throughout the next week. So now for the last thing that I want to talk about, which is timing. Now, the timing of the events around this eclipse, or that are caused or correlated to this particular eclipse, many sources say different things. You have some sources saying that you have to look at how many minutes the exact eclipse or the shadow covers the sun in order to know how many years of your life are going to be impacted by that particular eclipse, or the society that you're in that you're a part of will be affected by the eclipse. Other sources talk about 6 months, a year. Some talk about it lasts until the next set of eclipses, but it all depends. What I go for generally is a more personal approach. I don't do much of mundane astrology, but I'd like to talk about how that can be reflected in each of our lives, in our personal birth charts. And for that reason, I always use the eclipses as a storyline that's being developed throughout the time that the nodes are transiting those two signs where the eclipses occur. So when the first eclipse hits in that series, in the signs that they're going to come into, you will see the beginning of events, of storylines that will develop throughout the series of eclipses that are going to happen in those two signs. So whatever happened in the last year set of eclipses, by the end of the year, what happened then will have an impact on what's happening now. What happened then will set the tone for whatever is developing in your life's narrative at the present. So you're going to see the next chapter of those particular topics in your life coming to light. So I think that was all I wanted to say about this particular transit. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was able to help you think. It's a quick video, so not going in depth into any of the into any of the topics that were raised here today. If you have comments on it, if you have your own perspective, please leave them down below. Also, subscribe to the channel if you like our content. Of course, I hadn't posted anything in forever, but I'm planning to come back to it a little more in the next couple of months. So just like the video, subscribe, comment your thoughts if you like, and that's a great help. Also, check out the Hellenistic Astrology channel. It's called Hellenistic Astrology by Elsa, and she's a friend of mine, and we've done some projects together in that particular channel. So if you'd like to check that out, we also have a whole series on the Decans, the Decanates, and also in their tarot associations that we've made throughout last year. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. Thank you. I'll see you all next time.